pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First thing on our agenda tonight, do we have any public comment on the agenda items?
Any public comment?
Okay. All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to line item C, the consensus items.
I don't think I have much comment on consensus items tonight. Just that there is a lot, just like always in the summer in education, a lot of personnel. So please keep Jolene and Lori and the principals in your thoughts, because it's pretty chaotic with all the comings and goings and lots of paperwork tracking.
Summer school staff or summer bus staff?
Yes. Yeah.
Custodians. Do we have any questions, comments, concerns on the consensus items?
I guess I do have one statement, I'm sorry. There was a last minute ad on the overnight field trip. Our FFA, remember our ag teacher did resign last month, and we had been trying to find someone to help sponsor our FFA kids who were going to convention to get their American degrees, and Andrew Whirling did step up, and we appreciate that. And so we didn't get that information, but it is going to be here at the end of June, I think, 2 days, 15th and 16th.
18th and 19th.
18th and 19th, I'm sorry. So that was the last ad. I wanted to make sure that you did have that.
Thanks for pointing that out. Cool. I see it. Make motion to approve. Second.
A motion on the table by Eric, seconded by Tim. All those in favor announce by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Let that stand 5-0. I had to think about it here. I used to forgot how many tonight. On to line item D, old business, classified handbook, second read.
Okay, so I did copy some of this for you just because it's hard to do sometimes reading it online, especially when we're in these meetings. So it has some handwritten stuff on a little packet, and I just copied the pages because it would be really big if I didn't, that had changes. So the big things on the classified handbook that we did change were under attendance and leave, that for a classified person to start using their accumulated leave, not what they're annually awarded as just being an employee, but accumulated leave after they've given notice of resignation or retirement in particular. If they're gone for more than 3 consecutive days, we may ask for a physician's verification of their absence, or again, when they start dipping into accumulated leave. That 3 days had been practiced here, but it had never been in writing, and it needed to be in writing for us to, if we needed to do something with personnel. We had several incidents with, we do have a large number of retirements this year, especially in the classified staff, wherein if they had a good number of accumulated leave days, they would just use them either here or there, or I'll take a whole month off before their retirement or resignation, and it just makes it very difficult to get jobs done. So it doesn't mean that they can't use them, it just means there has to be something that verifies there isn't, for sick leave accumulated, for example, that it is medically necessary. It's also just a means to, I think, help differentiate between, to help folks understand, accumulated sick leave is for sick purposes, medical purposes, it's not vacation. And that sometimes is distinction folks don't make readily in those situations.
And do we call it sick leave or do we call it PTO?
We don't call it PTO because we don't group leave together. We distinguish them from personal, sick, bereavement. All those are kept separate.
That's good.
Other things, we did match the bereavement leave that's in the master agreement, and I think we also added a little bit extra to address foster parents and adoption leave. for those staff. We matched the master agreement in offering classified staff to enroll in the sick bank during open enrollment for health insurance if they hadn't enrolled previously. And then we had some, like I told you before, we had some information given to us by State Board of Accounts about how to address what I'm calling duly employed staff members. So more often than not, this is like folks who are like a groundskeeper and a bus driver, a teacher in particular and a bus driver, and how, as we got into this, okay, how do you handle sick leave? How do you handle cancellation days? How do you handle those things? So State Board of Accounts told us that a person has a primary role,
All right.
a primary role and a secondary role. Their primary role is what determines their benefits and like leave time. So, for example, for a teacher who also drives bus, their leave is determined by their teacher contract. For driving bus, we are looking at it as you get paid when you drive bus. So if you have to find a sub because you can't make let's say you set a 7 a.m. dentist appointment. You're still going to come in to teach, but you have your dentist appointment. Well, you just don't get paid for that morning driving bus, but you don't have to take a leave day, a sick day from your teaching accumulated leave or annual leave granted. So that's how they told us to distinguish it. So there's some language in there to explain that. Also language in there, State Board of Accounts, again, in their audits are going to want to make sure that when our staff sign their contracts, that if we say contract time is 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. for teachers, but some of them are not here at that time because they're driving bus or leaving early to drive bus in the afternoon, that we are going to put some blurbs in our staff expectations that for those staff who are duly employed, they are agreeing, or sign on their contract, that they will agree to still meet the contract hours either before or after their secondary role tasks, for example. Same thing with folks who are doing custodial jobs and then they have another task. So always something new to learn from State Board of Accounts.
Do they have to put in more, is it just like over the course of time they put that extra in, or they have to do something extra on that particular workday? How does that work?
I think it's just more that they are meeting their 8 hours a day or whatever that comes out to be. I'm not going to really, and we also have a time and effort log that is very minimal that we're probably going to make them use because the state board likes things written documentation.
So anything they would do at night after?
Yeah,
that would
that,
work.
or
Okay.
that you come back and you call a parent, you need to call a parent or whatever that case may be. But they want to know that for what we're paying them for a teacher, they're meeting their contract obligations. I know they are, you know they are.
Right.
Um,
But I'm just thinking with the
Yeah,
state
sure,
audits,
yeah.
how
Yes.
are you gonna prove it?
Yeah.
And how are you gonna keep these teachers doing both jobs if they gotta?
I don't like it, but Tiffany has assured me that because she has to do it with her grant folks who work through a grant or employed through a grant money, it is a very minimal time to do this time and effort log that they have.
Perfect.
So that's, we'll meet the State Board of Accounts because they want something in writing,
Mhm.
and that's documented regularly in real time, and so that will, we think, take care of that.
Good.
And luckily, we're not the first people that have done this, so this is what other schools have told us that have gone down
Yeah.
this route already that they're doing, so that's lucky to always learn from someone else.
Sure. It's been going on for decades.
Yeah.
Our neighbor at the lake
Yeah.
did it, and he's 90 years old.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, when he was a teacher, he did it in Chicago. Mhm.
The last thing that I think was more of a significant change is Good Friday had always been a half-day paid holiday for our 260 staff. We are recommending that it just be a full-day paid holiday. Several of them are taking a full-day, personal day or something anyway, and usually that half-day is not a make or break to what we're needing to get done in the summer with custodians or grounds or whatever, so we would just like to say that's a full day and go on from there. Are there questions you have of any of it on that one? Lots of handbook stuff this time.
Do you want to vote on them separate, or do you want to cover both of them and then?
probably your choice. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, you do however you want.
Let's go ahead and cover the transportation handbook first then.
So there's some overlap in some of the things, just because there are some things that, since bus drivers are classified staff, there's a little bit, but some things that were in particular in the transportation handbook, this isn't anything that's any huge deal, it's just a good reference for those in our payroll department who, because it does talk about things that we reimburse people for or pay them for, and so it's good to have it in writing somewhere. This is another one of those practices that were practiced but never in writing anywhere, so it's good to have it in writing so that when you change personnel in different positions, they know what's going on. And with losing Vicki and Jolene coming back after an interim away, we need something in writing because the knowledge pots are not here as much. So we did add that. We did add a section that listed physical expectations to the job expectations. We have had a couple situations where a staff member wasn't able to physically perform the job that was their assigned role. And since we didn't have that language in our handbook anywhere, it made it difficult to address the situation, and it really created a problem because they were unable to do what they were needing to be able to do for a student. And so that was something we knew we needed to get added. Clockable time, this is another thing that we're clarifying, and this a lot has to do with some of our dually employed folks too. So I tried to give them ample time to do their pre-trip and post-trip checks that legally are required for a bus driver. However, we have a few staff that those checks are done by transportation staff, and we take their bus to them so that they can come out of the building. Okay, so they can come out of the building and do that. So I'm just clarifying when they can actually clock in so that we're not.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't know.
Has to be done now.
Ask the attorney.
Sorry, folks at home. Anyway, clarifying clockable time, just when can you clock in if you're not actually going to be performing some of those duties that I was allowing a 15-minute ahead of your drive time. There is a 7-minute grace period in front line already that allows you to, if your start time is 3 o'clock, you can clock in at 2:53. Or if your clock out time is 3:30, you can clock out at 3:37. So there's still grace period in there, but it's not going to be the full 15 to 20 minutes that might be allowable for someone that's coming and getting their own bus ready. So those are some of the things that I'm talking about.
I do got one, and I don't know how far back you're gonna go, but on page 5, under something. Under the BHS handbook X, there is just a typo, and that's just my OCD. It's done under the student parking rules and regulations.
Are you just going to vote on the,
Yeah.
the second reads are just the classified and
Okay.
the transportation?
Okay.
I'm sure there are, because anytime you kind of work on track changes.
Yeah, it just looks like something was just mixed in and just a letter wasn't taken out, but I
Thank you, because those are good. I think that's it on the old business under those two handbooks.
From the second read, the classified handbook, is there any question, comment, concern? From the second read on the transportation handbook, is there any question, comment, concern? I'll entertain a motion to approve the handbooks, both classified and transportation.
I'll make a motion to approve, sorry.
A motion on the table by Jill.
The assumption was there. I didn't want to, you know.
Do something.
I'll second the motion, the clarified motion.
Yeah.
It was sufficient.
Just makes
Yeah, he used to make those kind of, I'm like, oh, that's all I have to say? Okay, cool.
Attorney's
Do I have a
message, isn't it?
second?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, I have a motion on the table by Jill, seconded by Tim, to accept the handbooks for both the classified and the transportation as presented. All those in favor announce by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Make that pass 4-0, or 5-0. Gracious, I've lost how to count. On to new business.
So the first thing on new business is the approval again to move money from our education to operations on a monthly basis. We do this every 6 months. We are not asking for any changes this month. I'm trying to make sure that I'm going to say the right amount. I'm probably not going to because I gotta get to, I think we're at 75. Lori, do you remember? 75 per month, which again has ended up coming about between 8 and 9% of our expenditures, and the cap is still 15.
Good.
How much per month you
I
said, Kim?
think we had,
75.
I think we had decreased that in the last
75,000?
6 months
Yes.
anyway.
Yes, we had been decreasing
Yeah.
the last several years pretty consistently. And I'm not saying it won't decrease again, but we have moved some things to operations funds, some personnel things from education, so we want to make sure that we're building, as you'll find out next month again, we're really trying to beef up our transportation because still have a need to recruit and retain drivers, and I think we're getting a very competitive compensation package for our bus drivers. So anyone who might want to talk about driving bus, come to North Adams. So that's that one.
Do you have any question, comment, concern on the resolution? Line item number 1.
Nope, I'll make a motion to move $75,000 a month from education to operations from July through December of 2024.
Oh, that's how you make a motion.
That's
Wow.
it.
I'll second that.
And I'm not repeating it.
Ours was a lot quicker though.
I have a
That's
motion on the
true.
table by Eric, seconded by Jill, to approve the resolution as presented.
There you go. That's how you get around that.
All those in favor announce by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion moved 5-0.
That's just for 6 months, right, Kim, until the end of the
Yes.
year? Okay.
The next thing is when we hired our new band teacher, who we're very excited to have on board, Rachel, I'm going to mispronounce her last name, Kassar, has 6 years' experience, great, came highly recommended from some of our staff who know her, and she was looking at our program offerings, and at the middle school said, why aren't we doing a music class for those kids who don't want to do choir or band? And so she's requested, and we agreed that she wanted to add an exploring music option for those kids who didn't want to do instrumental or vocal, that could do a lot of different, a sundry of things otherwise. So most of the other new courses went through already, so this was a late add as a need your approval to be able to offer that on our course catalog.
Any questions, comments, concerns on line item number 2, the BMS course edition course number?
I think it's a great option for the students.
Yeah, very
Love
cool.
that.
That's neat.
No additional discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion.
A motion on the table by Carla. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A motion on the table by Carla, seconded by Eric, to approve line item number 2, the approval of BMS course edition course number for exploring music. All those in favor announce by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? 5-0. Line item number 3.
So this is a program that I came across actually about a year ago, just happened to stumble upon it. I'm not so sure you didn't give it to me, Tim, as one of your pickups from one of the ISBA conferences you went to. But anyway, I reached out to Indiana Wesleyan folks who were in charge of this Step Up program because I was intrigued. At the time, we didn't really have a situation because you have to have a position and you have to have someone who qualifies to be in the program. We didn't really have that scenario. Here recently, however, we've had our emotional disabilities high school teaching position open for probably almost 2 months now, and unable to secure someone who was wanting to do it for what we could pay. And then that's it. We had 2 candidates. They couldn't do it for the pay. So we've been looking, and as we suspected, it was going to be a difficult ad. Under this program, basically what they've done in Indiana, and this has been a program that's not just, it's been in other states. Texas is where it originated. This is a program designed for classified staff in a school to have an accelerated opportunity to earn a degree and their teaching license while teaching, basically. And so what happens is the program is designed so that it costs the school approximately what it would cost for a first-year teacher, and you pay the teacher some percentage of a first-year teacher's salary. The remainder of that, the school is responsible for providing a discounted tuition rate to the school and books and fees. So again, classified staff often don't have the potential, the earning potential to pay for college on their own, so that's often a stumbling block. But when you see potential in someone and you have a position and it's mutually agreeable, this would be a good scenario, which we do at this time have someone that we have in mind. This is when you would potentially use this program. So we do have someone that has an associate's degree, is within a year and a half of traditional bachelor's degree, interested, been in the program working with these students for over 7 years. Very good. In fact, we've encouraged this person multiple times, you should go investigate getting your degree, and knowing we didn't have anyone, I'm like, I've been doing this for a while, I should do this. So we got in contact with IWU again, and working with Scott, had some requested revisions to the MOU, which I don't know if you want to talk about some things you...
Yeah, I don't have my notes on what I took, but we cleaned up a little bit about phraseology on how reimbursement's going to work, and if we get a quit in the middle or anything like that. And we're going to have also a memorandum of understanding with the employee on a commitment to us for a term as well.
So this is the first step to even be able to get this person enrolled in the program, is that we have to agree to be part of the program and do the things that they're asking us to do in order for the candidate to then apply. So there's a lot of hoops. But again, I think we're all very excited. The teaching staff in that department are very excited too, because they've worked with her forever and know
That's
she's
wonderful.
quality person.
Good.
Yeah.
So would you just,
Pardon?
Memorandum of
No.
understanding.
What is it?
Memorandum of understanding.
Oh, okay.
do you just kind of decide which teachers you see that potential in to offer them that? Is that kind of or they recommend?
Well, there's going to
maybe?
have to be a process, because it isn't, again, you have to have a position, and it has to be something that there's mutually agreed that you would be a good, just like hiring for any other position, this is a good fit for you, because it's contingent upon them being able to be in that position, work in that position while they're going to school.
That's great.
So this isn't just special needs? It could
No,
be
this is
anything.
everything,
Cool.
virtually
Any
everything.
kind of teaching position.
And it might be down the road, but there might be, that you would be able to answer some of these questions, I understand that, but could there possibly be then some kind of contract that they stay with North Adams for
That's
so long?
exactly, that's
That's
the
the
Yeah, that's
MOU.
part of the.
Oh, that's the MOU.
That's the extra.
That's the
yeah.
entire portion of the MOU.
Yes.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, we probably are going to require a certain number of years that they would commit to staying with us, otherwise they'd have to pay back
Okay,
the tuition. or-
but we don't know the certain number of years
Yeah,
yet. That's the part that,
I'm
okay.
calculating
That's
some of that, but.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the school, the good part is the school gives for candidates in this, either, there's a 25% discount on tuition fees. So if you would go to IW normally, you're going to pay the full amount, but through this program, they offer a 20, so that's part of the incentive too. And it's completely online, self-paced, and again, it's accelerated, so they're not having to go 4 to 6 years trying to get something completed. So, and they have 3 tiers, so someone who has 0 college experience, it's probably going to be a 3-year commitment, but that's better than 4 to 5. Someone who has probably an associate's degree or a lot of college credits, you're talking about a year to year and a half. And then they also have a transition to teaching accelerated program, so someone who already has a degree in something but needs the teaching pedagogy, that can be a 6 to 8 month, which is pretty quick.
That's
pretty
really
cool.
great. I love that.
So excited to see how this goes, excited for our kids, because again, this person already knows the kids, and
Cool.
and it's gonna, and I have a shout out to our special education team at the high school, because while they're doing this, this person wouldn't have the ability to do the formal legal paperwork that goes with IEPs, because that's a legally binding document. They don't have the certification. So that team's like, we don't care. We'll step up and do this in the interim, because we know we're getting someone quality and someone that'll be here when we're done. So
That's great.
thankful for them.
That's really great.
Any additional question, comment, concerns for the MOU with Indiana Wesleyan University and the Step Up program? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Tim, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Jill. All those in favor, announce by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? It stands 5 to 0.
Lead as far as that.
Line item 4, the approval of MOU with Park Center.
Appreciate that.
So Park Center is one of our 3 mental health service providers whom we have MOUs with typically. They did give us an updated one. There are really no changes to it. Park Center is not someone that we financially support in this. It's not, again, a mutual division of services. This one is, usually Park Center is presently our community approved provider for folks who have been court ordered through DCS, through probation, to receive services. And then this agreement is just to say for our students with parent permission who have services through Park Center, they can come into the school on mutually agreed times and work with our kids. So again, there's no financial commitment on North Adams' part. It's just saying that we will work with them, and their folks have, you know, the background checks, the liability protections, things like that.
I'll make a
Questions?
motion.
Oh, you're right, do it.
Oh, sorry. Make a motion to approve the MOU with Park Center.
I second.
All right, gracious.
We're trying to make it easy for you.
Yeah, that's it.
There you go.
Motion on the table by Eric, seconded by Carla to approve the MOU with Park Center. Any opposition here? I'm not even speeding it yet. All those in favor, announce by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Let that stand, 5 to 0. Line item 5, the MOU with Adams Memorial.
And Adams Memorial also updated their MOU for next year, and this year there were no increases in cost of services and no changes to the number of hours we were providing, I don't believe, so.
Okay, that was my question. I couldn't remember what
We're
the
kind of
cost was.
maxed out with capacity, but again, there's always a need, and they're very good at working with us if there's extenuating needs to try to find a way to make happen what needs to happen.
So there were no changes then to the
No.
MOU?
It's
Okay.
the same cost. That one, we do have an expense.
Right,
But it's
right.
no new expense
Same
from last
same
year.
as what we had last year. Okay, thanks.
I'll make a motion to approve that one as well.
Carla?
I'll second.
Just looking for my second. Thanks.
This is your mental health.
We're getting called out for that.
I just say.
I want you to sign that.
All those in favor of the approval of the MOU with Adams Memorial Hospital, everybody in favor announce by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Let that motion stand, 5 to 0. Line item 6, the readoption of the teacher appreciation grant policy.
There are no changes to this policy either. There's just legislation that we have to annually readopt it. I don't know why.
Nice.
No sense.
It does not make sense. At some point, they'll probably redo that, but that's what we're doing.
It's an easy one. I'll make a
It is.
motion to approve.
I'll second.
The motion on the table by Jill, seconded by Tim. All those in favor announce by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? That motion stand, 5 to 0. Line item 7, approval of district property insurance.
Okay, so you have a packet that's like this. Wowza.
Yes. Ridiculous.
So we were not surprised that went up. We are pleasantly surprised that our agent had a second company to recommend, the CM Regent. If you notice, the premium is quite a bit lower. I think we're talking about a difference of what, $9,000 about from what we paid last year
Yes.
to a lot more, a lot more, 40-some thousand dollars if we stayed with Liberty Mutual. The notes at the bottom tell you some differences. Liberty Mutual deductible is 5,000. CM Regent is 10,000. Workers' compensation was pretty, I assume, a wash. Auto physical damage deductible 5,000 under Liberty Mutual, 1,000 under CM Regent. Wind hail deductibles 100,000 under Liberty Mutual. Water damage 50,000, and the same are grouped together under CM Regent for a deductible of 10,000. So that's substantially less.
Yes.
So at this time, our recommendation is that we change our district property liability insurance to CM Regent for next year.
Not familiar with that company name. Are they
They listed,
rated and everything?
MSD Wayne has them,
Okay.
Lake County, I think, I'm probably misquoting. Lori, do
In
you?
your bundle there, on the last page.
The last page has a
Okay,
list.
sure.
I guess I should have listed. Daleville, LaPorte, Michigan City, Muncie Community Schools, and MSD Decatur.
What's it called again, the name of that company?
CM Regent, REGENT.
Or like a, okay, like a royal family region.
Plus we don't have.
And you
to
said
listen to
the
them.
premium was for 40,000 less or 9,000?
It's about $32,000, almost $33,000 less in
Premium
premiums.
is, really?
And their deductible is far less for wind and hail damage, which, that's part of the reason, to be honest, that I think a lot of premiums for insurance companies of this nature are going up because there have become so many more localized storms that have a tremendous amount of property damage from wind or those types of natural disasters. So the fact that we don't have a $100,000 deductible could potentially be a really good thing. The difference is only a $10,000 deductible with CM Regent.
I mean, it's outside of the cost, but what it covers and so forth is,
Relatively the same, pretty, again, sounds better as far as deductibles go. Again, overall deductible being property deductible 5,000 for Liberty Mutual versus 10,000 for CM Regent is better, but it's $5,000 in the scheme of probably what property damage would run is negligible.
Right, right. Eric, just make sure you understand it's 30,000 less than the next highest bidder.
Oh, no, less than last year.
It's about 9,000 more than last year's.
9,000.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
It sounded
Clarify. I
like,
didn't
yeah,
hear.
it's still an increase in cost, but less than what it could be.
much less than if we
Yeah.
would have stuck with
Yeah.
our current provider. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Difference between the two,
Yeah.
in your favor.
Yes.
And who's the local insurance agent? Who sells that?
Mark Gary.
Fort Wayne or?
Muncie,
Muncie, okay.
USI Insurance Services, Muncie, Indiana.
Oh, there you go.
Again, it's difficult for us to get very many available bids on property liability insurance or liability insurance just because of some of the nature of the programming. Having the rifle room and rifle club is something that disqualifies us from a lot of other companies.
Really?
Yeah. Having the pond on the property can be a disqualification sometimes, especially because there's allowed access.
Oh.
So those are all things that we only get 2 or 3 usually that will look at us.
Okay. We're going to keep the rifle teams, though.
I don't know. That's history, right?
Any additional questions, comments, concerns on the district property insurance as presented? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion,
To do what?
whatever she just said.
Approval of the district property insurance for the period of July 1, 24 to July 1 of 25.
To switch to the CM region?
Yes.
Okay. I'll second that.
Detail.
I know, I'm
He
sorry.
is
I
on
just told you.
details tonight.
I just told her that earlier, that I read too
I
many
appreciate
small
no,
print.
That's okay, no, that's fine. I have a motion on the table by Carla, seconded by Eric, for the approval of the district property insurance for the period of July 1, 24 to July 1, 25 to switch to CM Regent.
Very good.
All of those in favor announce by saying aye.
Aye.
One
Any
breath.
opposition?
Breathy.
Will it pass stand 5-0? 8, approval of the district public official bonds. This looks like it was a new line item added.
It was a new ad because the new year's starting in July. So this is our folks who handle money, and just to make sure that there is protection in case there were ever any fraud. This is something we all have to do. And so these are our district folks who, again, Beth as treasurer, Beth Lichtensteiger at the high school as EZA treasurer, deputy treasurer Lori, and payroll and benefits coordinator Jolene. And these are the typical amounts we bought them for.
Any question, comment, concern?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion on the table by Jill. Do I have a second?
Second. Tim did.
Motion on the table by Jill, second by Tim, for the approval of the district public official bonds for treasurer, ECA treasurer, deputy treasurer, payroll and benefits coordinator. All those in favor announce by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion stands 5-0. Line item 9, approval of North Adams food service providers.
So again, you can vote on these individually or both at the same time, but letter A is to award the dairy bid to DFA Schneppels. I probably didn't pronounce that.
Schenkels Dairy.
Sorry. I did not recognize it, but.
Over Huntington.
Are they from
They're over
Huntington?
Huntington,
Okay,
yeah.
great. And then B is to award the renewal of the NSLP food proposal for, oh my gosh, too many acronyms. GPO food commodity supply bid with Gordon Food Service, which I think has been it was what we used last year.
Is Schenkels the same, or is that a different?
No, I don't think we used Schenkels last year. For some reason, I'm not even going to say what I think it was last year.
Okay.
But it was not Schenkels.
I think it was some Prairie Farms.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
I'm
I thought it
gonna
was,
say though.
yeah.
Is DFA part of the name of Schenkels? It's a conglomerate or something, or what's DFA?
Dairy Farmers of America, so DFA is a corporation, they may have bought Schenkels. I don't know that for a fact, but for some reason I'm thinking I remember hearing
I was
that.
thought before, I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay, okay, understood, Dairy Farmers of America, okay.
they may have. That's, I don't, for some reason I thought I heard that.
I've already got you quoted.
That's the answer that we
That
got.
sounded good to me.
Sounds great.
Glad that it goes to, that all those things can go to local.
Okay, with this being under line item 9, is there any question, comment, concern with regard to 9A, the recommendation to award the dairy bid to DFA Schenkels as supplier? Any question or comment or concern on 9B, the recommendation to award renewal of the NSLP food proposal for GPO food commodity supply bid to HPS Gordon Food Service? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve both items as presented.
I'll make it.
Eric, you're the first.
Yeah.
He and I are on the same page all the time.
Yeah, okay, sorry, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
I didn't
ma'am.
mean to mess up our, we
I
had,
have a motion on the table by Eric, seconded by Tim, to approve the line items as presented. All those in favor announce by saying aye.
aye.
Any opposition? That stand 5-0. Line item 10, first reading of policy.
Okay, so this legislation, it always makes things, timelines get a little bit crazy when they enact legislation in a session and then have it start that year. So we had some new legislation concerning personal communication devices and attendance code that was enacted in this last legislative term to take place, or to take effect July 1 of '24. So that means we have to get policy, because that's part of the legislation, is we have to approve new policy or updates to existing policy concerning those two items. And then it also meant after we finally got the policy, which didn't arrive here till mid last week, we then had to go through the handbooks again and make sure that that language was updated to correspond with them. So I think we're close to getting it. So I'm just going to go through those things with you, and those are printed for you too if you need those. I'm going to go through all of them, and then if you want to vote on them, it's not a vote, I'm
This is
sorry,
just
it's
first
first
read.
read, so
Okay.
this is just me going through them with you. So the first policy that has very minor revisions, I don't even think they're really significant too much, except where it comes to meetings of the board, and I'm sorry if what I copied now that I'm looking at it, the highlight looks like it's blocked out. But this is the bylaws of 0100. There is just some minor verbs, but then it also, let me just try to bring it up on mine. It also goes over the meeting of a school board and what things are allowable under open door policy. So there were a few changes to that. I'm going to bring it up where I actually can read it, so I apologize. Okay, so when you get to the section on executive session, I think the addition here was that you can add a board member who has not yet been sworn in as a member of the board, but who was recently elected. So if you haven't had the swearing in, they could still participate in executive session. So that was one update. The next major update was on the meetings, a gathering of the majority of the board for the purpose of taking official action on public business. Does not include, so this does not break open door policy, a social gathering that has nothing to do with board business. If you just happen to show up at a graduation party that you were all legitimately invited to, that's fine. On-site inspection of any project, program, or facilities, traveling to and attending meetings for the betterment of the board and board business, a caucus, gathering to discuss industrial or commercial business, orientation of just your roles as board members and public servants, a gathering for the purpose of administering just an oath of office, and then collective bargaining discussions if the board is not basically bargaining with the exclusive representative, but just to receive information on the process of collective bargaining. So those were a few changes that were made in legislation. The other things that I see were just different references to other bylaws that have some updated numbers, and then just some updated legal code at the end. So this one was, again, more so just a quick way to address some recent changes that went through the legislation as it relates to board meetings and what are allowed and what aren't. The next policy that you have is policy 5200, and it is about student attendance. There were a lot of changes, I shouldn't say a lot, big change, a couple big changes to attendance in recent legislation. So I think in my notes to you, I referenced some of the key takeaways. So the new legislation targets grades K to 6. And what it does is require schools so basically our elementary and part of middle school, to look at any accumulation of 5 unexcused absences during any 10-week rolling period. So this was the issue for schools, that we don't work on rolling timeframes. We work in usually quarters or semesters or years. So this is during any 10-week rolling term, we have to notify a parent within 5 days that their students have 5 unexcused absences. So that's going to be an increased monitoring and documentation. We have to contact the parent and set up a meeting. It can be via phone, virtually too, but you only have 5 days to do that. You only have 5 days to meet upon the notification. If the parent attends or not, the school still has to have the meeting among in-house staff and develop a plan to diminish that student's absences. In the event that they would accumulate additional unexcused absences, then it is mandating, which we've been doing this as practice already, so this wasn't a huge change for our staff. Other schools, it has been, they are mandating that you go ahead and make a referral to the prosecuting attorney of your county for failure to attend. And again, we've been doing that, which Ms. Jeremy Brown and his team and then probation have been very cooperative in working with us and wanting to have our kids in school, learning. Obviously, extenuating circumstances are removed out of it. There are kids with chronic conditions. There are kids who might have intermittent illnesses or situations that require absences. Those are all things that we take into consideration, and there are processes to have those addressed. We're talking with unexcused, the process where either there's a pattern of absences, number one, or number two, there is failure for any communication from home or from a healthcare provider as to why that student would be absent. So in the policy part, it corrects a few definitions, and then it talks about, again, this, they call it truancy prevention. They make some modifications to what is considered an excused absence. We did add, and again, it's kind of hard to tell the difference between the pink and orange, I guess, once you print this out. The things in orange are the things that we added as a district. Most of it is pink. The two ads that I worked with Scott on, in the middle of the back of that first attendance policy, it says, subject to North Adams Community Schools disciplinary code respecting attendance, the board considers the following reasons as potentially qualifying as excused absences. Right now, our attendance policy has a 5-day limited attendance. So basically 5 days per semester you get for whatever you might need to be absent for, as long as it's communicated and it's a verifiable and excusable absence. After that, however, unless there are some extenuating circumstances, those absences may be counted as unexcused, even if the parent calls in or there's a note from a doctor, depending upon what the situation may be. Reason for that is, this happened a couple years ago. We were having a big problem with attendance. We worked with Jeremy Brown and as our district prosecutor. And basically what happens is, if you, and this is why the state is doing this, if you count every absence of a student excused because there was a communication from someone, they could still miss 50 or 60 days of school with no consequence or no incentive to come to school. So again, we're not talking about wanting to cause a problem for anyone who has a legitimate issue going on. Those are all extenuating circumstances, and there are other processes like certificates of incapacity, medical absences, things like that. There's students with IEPs, who have reasons that they medically need to receive services or interventions or therapies or whatever. Those are all exempted. We're talking about, again, the student who has habitual absences and there doesn't seem to be an extenuating circumstance that is verifiable. So that is our one addition, and it was a similar addition under unexcused absences. Can I tell you, we don't prosecute a lot of people at all. It's usually, number one, it's a very long process, and we try to work with the parents and families, and usually you get it resolved, or it is a legitimate situation that it's kind of outside everyone's control. But for the 5 to 10 a year, you might need to address this with. This kind of policy is very important. Otherwise, you end up with students who not only are they missing their teaching, but they might just, we've had situations where we've had to get the National Clearinghouse of Missing Children involved, state police, because they can just disappear, no communication from anyone, no school, other schools picking them up, and we don't know where they are. And sometimes we find out they just weren't enrolled anywhere, and that's not great, but at least they were okay. Other times we found that they weren't in a safe situation. So again, having the opportunity when needed to take more stringent action and to have a little more teeth in the attendance thing, I think I'm glad that the legislators are taking that action. I think it might need to go have a little bit more to it, but at least they're taking a first step because attendance in Indiana has not been a real strongly enforced, I guess. Again, we're lucky here in Adams County that we have local folks in our judicial system that choose to work with us and want to see our kids in a safe learning situation. Other counties, I can tell you, they're really worried about this because they know they've been told by their county government, we don't want to hear about it and don't tell us anything about it. So that'll make it difficult for them to adhere to the law when they're not getting that support, so.
I do have a quick question,
Sure.
and maybe it's kind of trivial as far as verbiage goes, but from a perspective of where it says parent request
Where are you
or
at?
parent signature on pretty much, I guess, any of them, but right now, like
Okay.
under the truancy and habitual is just where I happen to see it quite a bit, is how important is it to identify parent and or legal guardian, especially in the day of age of so many fostering and those types of things? I mean, if it's not the legal parent that child is under the care of at that point in time.
I don't know, this was Neola's suggested language, so I can go back and look and see if they define parent somewhere else as being guardian and or
I just
the
didn't know
legally
that
appointed
it's worded.
guardian.
It doesn't obviously have to be a biological parent.
Right,
It
that's,
does
yeah.
have to be a person over whom has parental authority over them, whether that's a guardian, whether it's someone who has authority over them pursuant to a parent-granted power of attorney, or...
I didn't know what all the word parent encompassed, so that was just my head.
I would read it simply to encompass a person over whom has responsibility for that
Okay,
child.
perfect.
But we could always add
Yeah, no, I- yeah,
a
I-
definition at the start of it, because there are more and more kids who are in non-traditional family units, and that's fine, but it is certainly a respect thing that you try to give for the kid or the caregiver, whoever they may be, you try to respect what their role is.
So I think you've answered my question, but I mean, so it sounds to me, based upon what you're saying, that we really didn't have a lot of teeth to enforce attendance at school prior to this policy, prior to this legislation?
No, it's always been there, but this enhances the ability of the school to clamp down more quickly and to overcome the concept that everything's an excused absence, you can't count it. Now we've got this threshold, we can start counting much more quickly.
Okay.
You know, if mom and dad are going along with the program before, we couldn't do anything.
Right.
Now you can't.
I think it also is the first step in, again, trying to get more consistency across the counties for the judicial system to support clamping down on attendance issues. It's going to be harder in some, and I don't think that language is in the legislation as overtly, but I can tell you in my superintendent groups, that's already a discussion that's been had with legislators, that this is all well and good, but what do we do when we don't have support of our prosecuting attorney or probation or juvenile courts? And so I think that is something they're digesting, that this wasn't just the schools not addressing attendance. I think they started, now that all this data is getting taken in real time out of Power School and different student management systems, they're starting to see how big a problem chronic absenteeism is. I think it really surprised them. So this is a first step in trying to address it. So it is telling schools, number one, we want you to address it. And again, in small schools, smaller schools, in our types of communities, most of us do. I don't know what they're going to do in some of the larger urban areas where attendance is just not even part of the consideration because it's so
It's a
massive issue. So
I feel like this has been brought to my attention a lot recently, fairly recently, and I'm sure COVID did not help, where it just kind of does feel like some parents might kind of feel like it's not that big a deal if they don't go to school, and then the student falls behind, and so I think this is great. I think they've kind of gotten into this, attitude of, is it really that big a deal to go? I mean, because of what we experienced for so long with COVID, so.
that's been a part of a conversation I've heard as well, is that we're all seeing a lot more call-ins from students and in different industries. I hear even from adults on, I need a mental health day, I need a break, I need a self-care day, which all those are fine and maybe could be needed occasionally, but I think because they're wanting to also see more employment readiness, they're also wanting to see us push harder that even when you're having a not-so-great day, you still have to go to work. And you have to be able to distinguish between a not-so-great day and a day that you truly should not be at work. And so that's something they're pushing back on us as an employability soft skill is attendance. And I don't disagree with it. It's important. Again, at the same time, we're still kid advocates. So when there are extenuating circumstances and legitimate things that need to be addressed, that's what we want to make sure kids are safe and have their needs taken care of. Okay, then, I keep forgetting, I'm going through all these first one. I did give you, I am probably going to design one of these that Porter County shared with us in one of my superintendent group. I kind of like that graphic because I think it's easier to understand for parents. It's what this new, even though it's not truly new for us, I think it breaks it down in a much more easy visual. So we're going to design something like that for North Adams. The next piece of policy is communication devices. So again, I think our legislators are hearing what a lot of the emerging research has been saying about how distracting cell phones, smartwatches, basically any of those things can be to students, taking away from their learning, but also many times those devices not only are distractions, they also encourage and are the triggers for a lot of conflict and even bullying. And I think they're trying to give us the ability and the validation to try to eliminate a lot of that from at least the school setting. Does it mean they're going to go home and not engage? No, it's not going to go away completely, but it may mean that we don't have as much of it to deal with in the school setting. So basically what this says is we have to have a policy of how and when devices are able to be used. The policy for the district I'm proposing just basically says during instructional time, we don't want them to be used unless by express permission by the teacher and for educational reasons. Other than that, unless they're needed to manage their health care or part of their IEP, they're really not needed during instructional time. That's pretty much what the policy says. That's pretty much what the legislation asks, is limiting it during instructional time. We can be much more limiting. I mean, there are sample options in here where you could say they couldn't even be used on a bus, or they can't be used at lunch, or they can't be whatever. I didn't really want to go that far because I do think kids need a diversion sometimes. But I can tell you our individual buildings from an age level perspective have taken slightly different stances from a discipline code, and we'll go over that in a moment. This policy is just, again, a big umbrella policy that says during instructional time we want kids engaged in learning and not on their phones.
So it wasn't that way it was supposed to be, it's always supposed to be that
Right.
way, but it's gotten lax.
So it's not the lack of having them on their person, it's the lack of use. I mean, not lack, I don't want to say lack. I mean, they're not prohibited to have on their person, it's just.
Not at the high school. I will tell you the elementary and middle school's rule is it needs to be elementary, as we really would rather you not have them, but realizing elementary encompasses up through 5th grade, it needs to be in your locker or in your backpack. Middle school's actually rule for the last 2 years has been in your locker, except after school. You can check them at passing periods, but they don't want them. High school has always been, and they're just enforcing it more, you can have it on your person, in your backpack, in your pocket, just out of sight during class time. You can be on it in passing period, lunch, before, after school. But that's the discipline code perspective versus the policy perspective. And then the last one is a policy that we could have added back in 2022, and I didn't, not unfortunately. I thought there might have been an opportunity to use this type of licensing process, and it is called an adjunct teacher. There are good and bad things about this. There are parts of it I'm not real comfortable with, but this was something that basically in the teacher shortage, I think the DOE offered as another option. So basically this says if you have a person who has practical experience, working experience in an area, but they might not be licensed in it or maybe even not have a degree, but it's a situation that doesn't qualify for a workplace specialist, which is what we license a lot of our CTE vocational courses through. Like the situation I would use as an example, let's say we needed a PE health teacher, and we have someone who's been a personal trainer for years and done a lot of certifications in diet and those things, but we can't find a good licensed person. That could be someone we could potentially go through this process to have them named as an adjunct teacher. So the positives are it allows you to hire people that otherwise you may have not have been allowed to hire and to fill positions that you were having difficulty filling. Some of the drawbacks to it, as I perceive, are it does allow the circumvention of the collective bargaining unit. So these folks are not allowed to be members of the collective bargaining unit, which means, as Eric pointed out, you can pay them as much or as little as they're willing to take and you're willing to afford, I suppose. So there are, of course, ISTA has some concerns about that, and I 100% understand where the concerns would happen as far as worrying that it would be more used unethically to hire staff and not have to pay them the wage that anyone else would get, whether, again, it's more or less.
Wouldn't it be highly unlikely, though, that, well, maybe not highly unlikely, but somewhat unlikely that somebody would accept a position at a significantly lower?
I would think so.
In today's marketplace,
I
especially.
would think so.
Maybe here, but I bet there's places in the state where that's not true.
Potential, yeah.
I think it's more apt that someone could get paid a great deal more than what's on the salary
Probably
schedule.
the other way.
Like you're bringing someone in to teach, I don't know, AP biology who is a doctor, a retired doctor or something, and you're going to really try to entice them or something. I don't know, but that would. We don't have anyone that I am wanting to go through this process, and it is not recognized as a statewide license. It is a locally recognized license. So basically, if we have this policy, then I would bring a recommendation to you to hire this person as an adjunct teacher. They're only licensed here through your recommendation and approval. So that's another.
Yeah, I read that. It says that the board issues the adjunct teacher permit. So it's actually us that would be saying, are you allowed to teach?
So the reason I'm bringing this up, again, I thought we might have had someone, and honestly, it was to go with the Step Up program because they said, well, we could hire those folks as adjunct teachers or some other folks. You can't do that with special needs teachers. I found out after I dug in. I just would like to have it, I guess, as an option. I don't want to use it, again, unethically. I certainly, now that I read they're not even allowed to be in the collective bargaining unit, I am a teacher advocate, and I would not want to intentionally circumvent that. I don't think that's a positive for that person, honestly, either, because there's legal protections that go with that, being under that umbrella too. So, but if we couldn't find anyone and we needed this licensing process, it is better, I felt, for it to be an option that I bring to you than having to get a policy passed and then a second read and try to get someone hired. So we're talking at least 2, if not 3 board meetings. That was the reason I'm bringing this forward right now. Still not sure how I feel about it, but it's an option. Then handbooks. I again just pulled out the pages that had the significant changes on them. I got my notes in. I'm sorry, this was like you were having to read a 500-page novel. So the elementary handbook largely didn't have a lot of changes. The attendance, because the K-6 legislation obviously targeted them. So there's definitely a blurb in there about having to have the parent meetings and the plan to minimize attendance issues. The truancy prevention language, that would be if we passed the policy in the handbook, that would basically just explain that. And then I included their attendance guidelines. On the middle school book, attendance and cell phone policies again. There were several things that we added on the cell phone. Yes, a lot of it was policy. A lot of it also happened, Tiffany and I attended a school law seminar last week, so there were several other things that were coming out about search and seizure, as well as electronic communication devices. And so a lot of things that are added now in the advent of AI, so making sure you have policy about AI-generated things being included in these things, being a lot more explicit about where any device that has the capability of taking still or videos or audio, where that is allowable and disallowable. For example, having your phone in a restroom is fine. It shouldn't be out with the intent to take a video or recording or anything like that, locker rooms, things like that. Audio, again, is listed more emphatically because of the AI possibility and people recording things without consent or permission.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Under the cell phone, the third bullet point, close to the end of the last sentence where it says, in emergency, comma, the students shall go when possible to an area, should that be shall go?
Or should. It's probably shall or should. Thank you.
I kind of think that the whole restroom, locker room thing shouldn't even be allowed.
No, it shouldn't.
I just don't think, I mean, to say you've got any option, like, no, it just needs to be put away. They can be
Yes.
outside of their potential for an issue.
And there have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sure,
Yeah.
you know?
Lots of hours of potential
Yeah,
at different times.
yeah.
And I will say, 98% of our kids are great with it, and there's no problem.
Right.
It's always that one situation, though, that can go really bad, and unfortunately, that involves legal issues then when you're having those types of situations, where there was an expectation of privacy and something untoward was recorded of someone. We have some information in here because search and seizure was part of it, just so that parents and students know that temporary seizure of a device for non-compliance with these rules is perfectly allowable. However, that does not mean search is allowable. Only time search on a phone is allowable is if there is reasonable suspicion of something pretty bad. And usually if it's something pretty bad, it's going to be something we're going to turn over to law enforcement because we're not allowed to see it either. So lots of times I think some folks think because we take a phone, we're looking through it. We're not, because we're not allowed to and we don't want to. Kind of thing. Let's see. If the cell phone is confiscated, again, that temporary seizure is either going to be held in that teacher's classroom until the end of the period or until they can get it to the front office. And I think every school has their own policy. Sometimes it's just a warning. Most of time, at least the second time, a parent has to come pick it up if they want it back. And a lot of parents will say, you just keep it. They need to learn their lesson.
Yeah, there you go.
So we appreciate that too sometimes, but if they need it or think they need it, the parent has, again, unless something criminal potentially has happened, and then it's law enforcement's property until they can determine what they need to do with it. It's kind of out of our hands. We did add a statement to the middle school and high school about defamation of character, and that is in response to some of the AI-generated content that potentially could happen that doesn't necessarily break other rules, but it certainly could be detrimental to a student or staff member's reputation. So we added that. They added a couple comments about dress code, that we really don't want a student to go home if they don't wear something appropriate. We would rather the parent bring something, or they can choose something, because we have a plethora of clothes that they could choose from to borrow, so that they don't have to go home. The prohibited objects is where I think they wanted to make sure that they did not want the kids 7:30 to 3 o'clock to have their cell phone on their person. Again, they can check it in their locker, is what their practice has been. I think that's it. And then again, their attendance situation, because they have sixth grade, and so they're going through the same process of just the regular interventions. High school, again, updated search and seizure. A lot of that was about phone. And when search of personal property would happen and how that would happen. A lot, again, it's very similar to the middle school about cell phone. The high school did go into a little more detail about what dispositions would be given if there was non-compliance or didn't comply with the cell phone policy, so they have that fairly spelled out, and it looks like they get several chances before anything too drastically is recommended. The defamation of character. Note again, high school was not under the new legislation for attendance, it's K-6. They did add a 1 hour after-school detention and a 2 hour after-school detention, so they've kind of changed up their disciplinary consequences. Katie, and I understand, ISS isn't always something that kids see as a big deal because it's in school and it's not their time. They definitely hate missing their time more than they hate going to ISS, so I think she was wanting to give more taking their time earlier for small things than ISS. That's about it, I think. So again, any questions on those? That's a lot, and I know that there are, if there are, you can ask them now, or if you reflect on it, read through it, and you have more ideas or thoughts or questions, please email me or contact the principal, whatever you would rather do, or probably going through me, and then I'll contact the principal, and if we need more information would be, because I'm the one that's revising this right now. Okay.
The way I read things, we've already talked about that, how I read so closely, but the attendance policies are so confusing. Like, I don't know how you give this to a parent on a day and then there's all these different things. So it's got to be a way to simplify it.
That's what I think the graphic.
Yeah, there's got to be a way to simplify it.
Would be better.
And I know, Jill, weren't you and I, when we were talking with Mr. Baker, weren't we on the work day here?
Yeah.
About elementary school detentions and such.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
The
that was you,
lunches and
okay,
stuff.
yeah, for lunch detentions on, and I thought we were talking about unexcused absences where parents didn't call in, but if you look at the elementary one, which is actually the easiest one to read.
Does it have a chart?
The elementary one is the easiest one to read because it's in a graphic, but it specifies even for excused absences, the 6th one results in a detention. And so I kind of thought that if they were excused, that was the reason they were excused. But I also didn't think about going to 50 absences in a year by jumping, but I'm thinking, somebody who has the flu for a week and gets a doctor's note for the flu, and then the next time they miss a class or miss a day of school for something else, then they have a detention. I was like, that's kind of harsh.
But that's the stuff that you said you work with them,
We try to work with them. It is not something we love giving a lunch detention, and that's something I can go back and talk to the elementary about, because I think it has been a question brought forward. And like I explained to you, and I think they explained to all of you, even with unexcused after a certain point, and there are some families that are not very responsive when we try to reach out to them with letters or phone calls or emails.
Yeah, I think
to get
that's
that
what
nipped.
Jill and I thought we were enlightened, I thought,
Yeah,
in talking with
that
Mr.
sometimes
Baker,
that's the only thing that
that you
changes.
wouldn't get that call, and so it took that sort of a discipline in order to get the parents' attention, if you will. But like I said, it just seemed odd to me.
Well,
If they're excused, then
Let me
that's
go
what-
back and do
unexcused, I certainly can see
some
that.
asking, because again, under what I understand, let me go back and do some asking, because I think what our practice is, most things that don't have an extenuating circumstances are and should be being counted as unexcused after that 5-day mark. So if they're excused, yes, I see your point. They
Yeah,
should
the
be
whole thing's very confusing, like I said.
It is.
Read through
It is.
each one of the
Except that
handbooks and
doctors
it's
know. I
really
should take it
confusing.
up a notch. The parent is one thing, but if you have the doctors know.
You'd be surprised.
But
We do consider a doctor's note, but I can tell you the state attendance officer said that is basically a recommendation, that you can consider each one individually. And that's what we end up doing. We have, unfortunately, that is not the practice, luckily in our area, but we have had some situations where folks have gone out of town and found doctors who were willing to. Mhm.
If they put that much effort into getting the kids to school.
I know.
Yeah,
But those are the ones that are missing 30 and 40 days a year.
there's gotta be something in place to protect the students, because a lot of times they're just at the, you know.
But again, at the elementary level, the other thing is you want to make sure, especially for the primary age kids, attendance is not the student's responsibility, it's the parent's responsibility. And so, again, I know the discomfort is, why are we doing something punitive with the child when it's the parent's responsibility?
Well, like I said, we got over that once we heard
had a
Aaron's
good
story.
conversation.
Yeah, we had a good conversation about that.
It is a situation where when a student loses their recess, they're going to go home and tell mom and dad. And I will tell you, it's not their whole recess. They lose 5 to 10 minutes of their recess, but because that's not good practice either. A lot of times, those kids, all kids need
And
the release.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
So,
Well, and I imagine that post-COVID, there was a lot of abuse of sick days.
there were.
Although if you're sick, I really don't want you to come to school.
And we absolutely.
I really don't want you to come to school if you're sick, but.
And there are
It's
those
something to
kids that
think
we
about.
create a plan, part of the plan for some students that where there might be the assertion that there is legitimate illness, well then send them to school and let our nurse have them report to the clinic and let the nurse assess them. See if they have a fever, see what their vitals are, whatever, and then she can help give you some direction on whether you need to go to the doctor, stay home and rest, have further. I mean, there is a benefit to having an RN at the school.
I always say, try it. If you really feel that bad, you can go to the nurse, and guess what? He never comes home.
That's true. And other times, there's other things going on, and that's when the intervention, and that's a good thing about the meetings. We can talk about if we're depressed or anxious, and that's why we're having some physiological symptoms, that's fine. Let's deal with the crux of the matter and not the outcroppings of them.
Definitely.
Okay, are you ready for the next one?
Yeah, until item 14, the approval of resolution.
So I had to get Scott's help on this one. This one was a little harder to figure out what they were talking about. So basically, I think I gave it to you guys in layman's terms. We had a food service audit recently, and they did exceptionally well. But one of the suggestions the auditor made, which means that probably if we don't improve it, it will become a finding in a later audit, is because food service has such large purchases at once, it often goes above what our procurement policy says about our micro purchase limit. And micro purchase limit just means the maximum amount of something can cost a purchase before you have to get bids. Well, we're not going to go out and get bids for every time we go to Gordon's and buy a big fill the pantry kind of thing. So their suggestion was the DOE and the State Board of Accounts, or the USDA, excuse me, recently released in February a process whereby, especially for food service providers, you can increase that threshold from 10,000 to 50,000. So that's what this resolution is. Scott and I agree we need to go back and probably revise the policy at some point when we learn a little more about it. But for right now, this would allow food service only to have a limit for this micro purchasing, meaning they wouldn't have to get bids for anything that is under $50,000.
Okay.
And that's basically what it boils down to.
It's kind of acknowledgement that the costs of everything have gone up so
Yes.
much that the $10,000 is meaningless.
Irrelevant, yeah.
You're just gonna create too much bureaucracy to go make a purchase.
Right.
You have to get a bid every time you get
We'll need to be able to
$10,000.
be in a timely fashion,
Yes.
especially if you're gonna know on something that's kind of hard.
Good point.
And the recommendation of 50 is just.
That's the maximum.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
That's the maximum. So I think I think their recommendation was you might as well ask for the 50, knowing whether you ever really use the 50 or not. I don't think that we would per se, but we certainly would use more than 10.
Okay. Any
In
additional?
my view, 50,000 is mighty big micro.
Yeah.
Redefines micro.
Probably for us, but if you were talking like a Fort Wayne community, all those schools, that might not be micro.
It's up from supply and demand, they don't work. Any additional question, comment, and concerns on that line item? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion on the table by Tim, seconded by Eric, to approve the resolution to allow North Adams Food Service to self-certify micro purchases up to $50,000. All those in favor announce by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? It stands 5-0. Approval of donation.
So I shared with you that we had been given a matching grant basically from the former Adams County Habitat for Humanity, that if we could find donations or in-kind donations to help construct a construction lab for our building trades courses and team, that they would do a matching grant up to $50,000. So we have been in the process of trying to receive those funds, and would like to thank the Meyer Building organization for a generous donation of $500. We have received several offers for in-kind, so that kind of have to wait till we kind of think we have everything we need. We're still kind of getting, I think we're meeting with Barton Co. to kind of get the specs a little more. Anytime you build anything for school, it's not like building something for home, so trying to make sure we're considering everything that needs to be considered. But would like to thank them for that, and that will go into its own fund line so that it is earmarked for that. And if for some reason that wouldn't happen, it can be returned to them potentially then, if we would need to, or have permission to use it on something else.
Any questions, comments, concerns about the donation as presented? Now I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the donation by Meyer Building.
Motion on the table, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Motion on the table by Tim, seconded by Jill, to accept the Meyer Building donation. All those in favor announce by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion stands 5-0. Superintendent's report.
So, end of year was very busy. We had a beautiful commencement service, and got lucky that the rain held off just enough time to get everyone through and
close.
sorted to our cars.
It was close.
It was close. So thank you to the high school team for that, and for you folks for attending and giving out diplomas to our deserving seniors. I asked Mr. Baker to kind of give me a recap of the spring sport season. So he wanted us to make sure that we noted that Owen Minnick advanced from sectional into regional in golf. He shot a 77 at regional and missed going to state by just a few shots. So definitely congratulations to Owen, and great job. Haley Cole, amazing, going to state in her first year in track and field. And she placed 7th in women's shot put, and actually I think has since been recruited at, is it St. Francis she's trying she's going to actually, and gotten special permission from her basketball coach to throw shot for them too. So
Wow.
Great job for her, and congratulations, and what a phenomenal, just natural talent, obviously, but she works hard too. Softball made it to the championship in sectional, but lost a heartbreaker to Norwell. And baseball lost in the semifinal to Norwell as well. Mr. Baker said he doesn't want to have to mention Norwell twice in that context again ever in the future.
Life goals.
There you go, life goals. And that's most of the spring sports. Then other things, get back to my notes here. Facility construction update. We are almost wrapping up the track, and if you haven't been out there, it looks really nice. I think we're getting ready to do the paint either end of this week or next week, so that should be about done with it. Now that we've had this extended dry weather, if you want to drive back before you go home, back to the multipurpose room, the walls it was just one wall, now you're about to see it almost ready to be enclosed. They're going to set probably the steel for the gable before they enclose that fourth wall, but you can really see it start taking shape, and it's on pretty close to schedule. Probably a week, 2 weeks behind, but that's typical in that world. Summer Learning Camp we're in our second week, and that's going really well. Kids are having fun and doing a lot of fun things. We also did go ahead this year and offer summer daycare for students. We still have spots. We've had a little bit of folks who are maybe a little, thought they were going to come, and then spots or plans changed, so definitely have room for that. We're running about 10 to 12 kids now, hoping for 15. So if we could get a few more spots filled, but it's a great opportunity, again, to give our kids that opportunity, give our community members that service. I know I'm using it for my own kid, and that's been great for me to have him here and close by, and they're getting ready to do some of their first activities. I think they're taking them to the bowling alley, and they got a kind of a discounted price for the kids to get to go practice some bowling and get that experience, so we're excited for that. Registration is set to go live July 10th, which sounds like it ought to be a long way away, but it's a month. Everything's going really fast. And we'll be announcing our back to school nights and backpack bash, which I think backpack bash is July. I shouldn't even bring this up when I don't have it written down. I think it's July 29th, but that'll be in the July meeting, and we'll be sending things out. We are working hard to fill positions and just kind of wrap up 24 and get ready for 24-25. Going to a budget workshop tomorrow as we start building the budget for the district and hearing all the good news, I'm hoping. Larry DeBoer, I don't know if have you listened to him?
He's enjoyable.
He is, for an economist.
Yeah.
He inherited a sense of humor.
He
so
does.
He's fun.
Really good.
He is. But he's usually pretty good, too.
He's pretty accurate. He's very knowledgeable. He's brilliant.
So I'm hoping he's going to tell us good things are to come, and inflation is going to go down a little bit, and groceries won't be so expensive, but I bet I won't hear that.
Hang on to that. Yeah.
It'll be
You have to start with that positive.
Yeah. Hope springs eternal.
So, and then collective bargaining will be starting up prepping for that, and are prepping for it, but really digging into all that stuff here upcoming and getting ready for the fall.
We fall before we know it.
Yes.
That's what your Christmas break. Gracious. All right. Thank you, Kim. Any other matters to come to the board or before the board, by the board?
Just one quick thing. Last week we had our ISBA meeting down at French Lick. We met with Katie Jenner, Dr. Katie Jenner. Most of the conversation, once again, was about reading. There is going to be a continued press on just reading skills. The science of reading is something that they're really spending a lot of time with, talking through and what have you. I'm not going to be surprised. We're not going to be surprised if we see, the legislature stepping even more so in some way. Not sure exactly what that means yet at this point in time, but you're going to see just a lot more pressure on trying to get the reading skills up for our kids. So glad that we. One of the things we've spent some time with is talking about testing in second grade. We already do that, and it's really benefited us, I believe, in many ways, and I think the state saw what kind of benefit that provided, and so that's definitely part of the whole formula and everything. But just most of the conversation had to do with all the reading skills, and there's so much truth to that. A kid has to be able to read. If they don't, then all the other teaching and everything, all the other instruction that we give them really is wasted time in some ways. Just, I guess, more of a quick summary than anything.
Yeah. She is, I do enjoy listening to her. She is very personable, and I do think she listens, and I know she takes a lot of things back already. I know that they are not backtracking on the reading, but trying to, they took some information about some of the, because I don't know if you realize all these elementary anyone with an elementary license, which unfortunately is a lot of our special ed teachers too, even in high school or middle school, have to have this early literacy endorsement the next time they renew their license, or they can't renew it. It's 80 hours was what the legislation required. And I think already she, again, listened to people and said, okay, we've already, many of us have already been going down the science of reading track in different forms, like we've done OG and all those things. Why can't we just say, if you've had this training, you can at least say I fulfilled this many hours and then
Exactly.
reduce it. So she has listened to that and has advocated, and I agree with you. I don't think we're done with
Yeah.
seeing that foray into those things.
But I agree, Kate, Dr. Jenner definitely, very personable, like you said, that southern drawl, enjoyable to listen to, but yeah, I think she has to heart, the teachers and the educational system, and so I think she does a really nice job of lobbying the legislature and working for the kids, so yeah. I've been impressed by her.
My only thing is, once again, we're talking more testing. It sounds like our teachers they are always talking about, the legislators talking about not being able to learn on it. And it's like, well, because they're spending way too much time testing versus
Or teaching
being
for
a
the
chance
test.
to educate.
Yeah, exactly.
Agreed.
That needs to back off.
Yeah.
For certain.
Anything additional?
Real quick, the pool, sounds like they're gonna have that ready by the start of the school year. Do we know yet?
The boiler is in, I thank you, I think I cut short my facilities update. The boiler came in this week. We are wanting to install it at the end of this week, first of next, so we're hoping within 2 weeks it'll be ready to go.
Great,
But
that's awesome.
it won't be the first time that timelines with installers didn't match what I thought, but we are hopeful.
That's
It
what I
also
was
just
expecting.
goes to show there are still some big supply chain issues with anything that involves HVAC.
Yeah.
Anything. So that's why I'm so glad that we bit the bullet and went ahead and replaced some of our boilers and HVAC in other places, and need to continue to do that, because if you wait till it's gone, you're not going to get it anytime soon.
Yeah.
Months, if not a year.
So we're happy too. I'm really hoping, I don't know what swim club's doing exactly, but I was hoping they could recoup something this summer if we can get it done here
So
soon.
good, getting done, yay.
Yeah.
All right.
But it's-
Any board member and or public comment? That being said, we'll do the meeting.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank